Welcome to another episode of How to Do Character Voices with the Beginner Player. Today we're going to be covering how to do a constricted sound. So there are a lot of characters I do on this channel that are based off of constricting your voice, but I realize I haven't really done the best job describing exactly how to constrict your voice, but I think I found an analogy that should help, hopefully. Today we're going to be doing a rogue, picture a man in the back, and he's got this dark black cape, and he's covered in, leather armor that's really, it blends in with the shadow, and he's got this big knife at his side, his arms are folded, big beard, just stewing in the corner of some tavern. And he sounds kind of like this. This is the kind of the personality I imagine picturing that character.
Get out of here. You're in the wrong part of town, kid. Believe me. I've seen things you wouldn't believe around here. If you know what's good for you, you'll turn and walk out the door you came in.
We're going to do that kind of a voice. If you've ever gargled water, if you have a whole bunch of water and you're trying to prevent the water from coming back into your lungs, it's possible to close things off from entering your lungs, so to speak. And that same muscle you can use to prevent air from going out. So if you push out air with your chest, you're just exhaling, right? So you exhale, you're forcing that air out with your chest. Well, what happens if you try to prevent it? Picture like someone's just punched you in the chest, and that feeling like when you can't get air in, like that is that muscle closing up. So what you want to do is push out air with your chest, but stop it from coming out. And then, if you can, that muscle that you use to stop it, it's kind of a subconscious thing. Like when we get hit in the chest and we do that sort of subconsciously. That same muscle is the muscle that we use to sort of make these constricted voices. So if you open it up and add just a little bit of air out, so you close off, and you add just a little bit of air out. That's the basis for how to constrict a voice. So you could just be talking out like this. That same muscle is the muscle that creates that sound. That same muscle I'm using to stop air from coming out of my chest, and make that grunting sound like I'm getting punched. It's the same muscle that I open it up to allow just enough air to come out to make that and you can hear me constricting, you can hear me closing off the airflow, and then I'm letting out just a little bit of air. And you can hear me opening it back up. To make that rogue voice, what I'm doing is I'm lowering my pitch as much as I can, so I go really low, like I tilt my head forwards with my chin up, and that gives more room for air to kind of travel through my vocal cords, and then I sort of close off that airflow. So it's something I feel personally, I feel it more in my chest than in my vocal cords. This, whatever that muscle is, I feel it more controlled in my chest. So, that sound is coming a lot more from my chest than I can kind of feel it in my vocal cords. I can kind of feel it in my neck a little bit, but it's mostly in how I'm pushing out with my chest. So it's like this tension that I feel, that because I'm pushing out air and it's getting closed off, and there's this tension that's there, this feeling that's there. And once you get the hang of how to constrict that air, if you want to constrict a voice, it's just a matter of stopping that airflow from coming out. So that makes a voice that's simple, kind of like sound like someone's trying to take a dump. That's another way to possibly make that sound, is it's like, picture you're on a toilet and you're just... What you're doing there by making that sound, if you can replicate that sound, is you're preventing air from coming out. And so you've got all of this energy that's in your chest, all of this air you're pushing out. Something along the way is stopping it. And so it's like it's constricted. It's like a... My best advice to viewers who don't know how to really get that constricted sound is to try to replicate the sound of, first, that, like you're getting punched in the stomach, and then, as silly as it is, like you're having trouble on the toilet. And that's kind of the basis for getting that, for kind of unlocking that constricted sound. And once you get that, then you can do things like all kinds of different things. Like if you can add just a little bit of it to a voice, it's like, that is the difference between Khajiit has wares if you have coin and
Khajiit has wares if you have coin.
That is the constriction. That is the element right there. I'm only letting out so much breath, and it sounds like gravelly, like the air is moving through all this gravel and For me, the best gravelly sound I get is when I tilt my neck forward as much as I can, and I tilt my chin up, and that opens up airflow, and you can make all kinds of different sounds with that. Like for grung, my idea of a grung was like sort of like a toad, like ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. Here's another example that you could think of to get this sound. Most people can sort of subconsciously do an impression of a frog, ribbit, 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 ribbit. If you can replicate that sound, then you're on the right steps to constricting your voice. So back to the rogue character we were doing earlier. What we do is we just lower our voice as much as we can down here in this octave, and then we constrict as much as we can.
You're in the wrong part of town, kid. Get out of here if you know what's good for you. Believe me, this town ain't friendly to newcomers.
And it's sort of in that same vein as like Solid Snake or something, like,
Colonel, I'm trying to sneak around, but the clap of my ass cheeks keeps alerting the guards.
That rogue voice you're getting there.
I can crap myself at any moment. Some call it a curse. I call it a skill.
So that's the same kind of voice you're getting. And that's something I'll bring out from time to time. Cliche, brooding rogue in the back corner who's... So like the humor and situational irony of characters like that is like when they're in a bright room in a happy place, they just don't fit. And when people are like, they walk up and they're nice to them, they don't understand it. Like,
what are you playing at? Are you trying to compliment me? Disgusting.
And it just pisses them off. They don't understand. That creates that kind of humor and that situational irony when you put this character together with, a loud goblin who's screaming at the top of his lungs, and then this other player, and you got this brooding character back in the corner. It's a fun archetype to bring, and it's a voice usually created by that low sort of constricting to communicate. Like when you do a voice with a lot of constriction, you are sort of artistically expressing that they're rough in some form or another. That's why monsters, like, we associate them with having a lot of constriction. So like a ghoul,
I need your meat.
It sounds monstrous, and it's got that gravelly sort of roughness to it. Like a ghoul, like picture a ghoul coming up to you and saying, "Hey, I need your meat, man. I'm like starving. You know, yeah, that could totally be a situational thing that's funny, but it's really, it doesn't match. If you've never seen, put a link in the description. There's a funny channel that revoices over the orcs in Lord of the Rings, and he does normal voices over them, and it just cracks me up. Like, what do you smell? Man flesh! They're getting away! Gosh! And you see this big, monstrous orc walking around the screen. It just cracks me up. So situational voices, things like how constricted a character is, or breathy, which is kind of what I consider the opposite of constricted, where you're trying to let out as much air as you possibly can. Like you're yawning. Oh, where did I leave that? And then you've got the opposite of that.
Dang it. I'm so mad right now at absolutely nothing. Oh, I sound super threatening because my voice is rough.
Something like that. So, wrapping all of this up, first, make that grunt sound like you're getting punched in the chest. Another method is then picture like a constipated man sitting on a toilet seat just going, or like you're a frog going, ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. And then you put that all together, and what you can kind of do is you're pushing out air through your chest, and then you stop it from coming out. And from there, it's just kind of about mixing it into other voices. So like my voice now, I'm not really constricting. I can take it up to like a yawny voice, so and then I can go to the opposite. And that's the basis of a constricted voice. And then you can just kind of mix that in and use that for other characters. Hopefully this is helpful. And as always, it doesn't have to be perfect. I can't tell you how many of my neighbors I have completely weirded out, probably as they walk by my car and just hear me making pterodactyl sounds as I'm practicing different characters, like the kobold or things like that. There's a lot of exploring that comes before any voice that you really hear, and most of it's very silly. So having a sort of comfort with your own voice is really important. When I first started learning how to voice act, I did so by making weird sounds in my car to and from work. And I would do it purposely because I was scared of sounding bad. And so I would purposely make all of these weird sounds just to get sort of comfortable with it. Like someone's getting into a boxing ring and they're loosening up their muscles and jumping around before the fight, It's kind of like that. Like you want to loosen up and lose the edge and not worry about sounding, silly, not worry about sounding bad, because it's not about, we do these things because we love them, not because it's a chore. So whatever you do, practicing characters, voices, all of these things, just make sure that don't hold yourself under a lot of pressure, I would say. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say on this topic. So have fun and happy voice acting. Hope some of this helped.